about their mental health. Learn how you
do
can help at
this.
seizetheawkward.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, American
I need you to
Foundation for
look at your
Suicide
watch
Prevention, and
because I want to make sure we're out by 15. I'm really working to
on WCPT 820.
get some things done myself. Hold on.
This is AP News.
Okay.
A Chinese official calls
They're
it
trying
a
to make
joke.
this within 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, let me bring that down. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, hon. How is... Oh, no, I don't need that. Okay, very good. So to this read. All right. Okay, all right. So, yeah, you know me, I'm trying to get the last bit of my... Hey, everybody. Hey, Linda. Hey, Dave. Veronica. Andre. Joseph. How you doing? You need some food. Are you in Chicago? You know, we do food giveaways at Push during the Christmas season. So if you need to go to Push, 930 50th Street, but also check at your churches and the Salvation Armies. But we've been giving away bags of groceries through the holidays for years at Push. So make sure you go by there. Pastor Brooks, will you all be doing anything like that at Grace Central?
We're there every Tuesday. We feed between 200 and 600 families every Tuesday from 5 till 7.
Okay, what is your address? Because there's a gentleman who is looking for some food.
Oh, yeah, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois.
Okay, 10216 South Kitchener Street in Westchester, Illinois. Every Tuesday, they're serving meals there.
From 5 to 7, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so go to Grace Central, but also at Push we've been and Breadbasket we've been doing Thanksgiving through the holidays, and we were doing that quite frankly through the pandemic. We do it every Saturday, and it's a big basket of groceries. I really would like for you to consider putting Push under your Christmas tree. We do this kind of work all year, every year. You know, trying to help people with their utilities. You don't know how much people help you until they are gone. But all of this work costs. I mean, we need your help so that we can help you. I can't tell you. I mean, every time I go to the office, somebody's waiting because they need Reverend to get them a job, help them keep their job, help them get their job back. They need food, they need rent, they need, and I get it. But everybody, we need you to support these organizations that support you. Please do that. Please. We really, really need your help. So there's that. And Pastor Brooks, is good being with you today.
Yes.
Okay, and I cannot wait to get the good news from you. So there is that.
Good news tonight.
Okay, so we got that. Okay, so I've got these. I'm just looking at my stacks of stories that I've got today. And so I have to keep all this stuff straight. Thank you very much. These straight so that I can get through the show. All right, everybody. All right. And Darius, I need to speak with you today about some building that I need to do with the show. Everyone, please like and share. Daryl and Paula, if you would go over to the YouTube page. I'm really trying to shift the traffic there. I've been told that that's what I need to do. So please go. Thank you so much. Please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and like and subscribe, and please move over there. I'm doing all of these things.
And like and subscribe, and please.
Okay, that's me.
Over.
Okay. And I'm taking myself off of that. And so let's have a great show. Of course, we're going to get an update on the Jussie Smollett trial. Why? Because there are no cameras in the courtroom. And a lot of stuff is happening there. The Kyle Rittenhouse case, we could see it, feel it. The McMichael Bryan case around the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, we could see it, feel it. But now the judge in this case has questionable behavior, but we haven't seen it. We can only hear about it.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I agree.
Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thursday, December 9, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. We're going to get an update on the Jussie Smollett case. There are no cameras in the courtroom, so we need people who are there to tell us what's going on. And we're going to be talking about the 13th Amendment. That is the amendment that freed Black people from slavery in the United States. But there is an exception. If you go to prison, you become a slave again. They're trying to close that loophole in Congress right now. So I want us to talk about that. So we need your support to make that happen. So no one, red, yellow, black, brown, or white, is ever enslaved in this country again. And then Dr. Max Wolf is going to talk to us about mental health and the pandemic. Indeed, our Surgeon General has come out and he is warning about the perils of public health, the perils of our mental health. I mean, we don't take that seriously enough. I mean, think about it. You break your arm, you go to the emergency room. You break your foot, you break your knee. I mean, you need surgery on your back. I mean, we run. But if we have a fracture in our psyche, in our spirits, no one wants to talk about it, although oftentimes it's laid bare for the world to see. So we're going to be talking about that today on the Santita Jackson Show. So and of course, Dr. Deb's going to give us the latest on our health, talking about COVID-19 and these extra booster shots that in Israel, they're even looking for you to have a fourth. Wow. So what do you think about that? All right, everybody, let's get to some of these headlines. In Chicago, it's going to be a little warmer today, 42 degrees, and it will be cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 37 degrees, partly cloudy. On Wall Street, the Dow closed up 35 points, but they are up more than 25% for the year. They've had quite a year. NASDAQ closed up 100 points, and the S&P 500 closed up 14 points. In the NBA last night, our teams didn't do so well, but that's all right. They just keep fighting for another day. The Jazz won 36, the Timberwolves 104, the Cavaliers 115, the Bulls 92. And tonight we're going to get some great hockey. The Wild will be playing the Sharks, and the Chicago team will be playing the Canadiens. Everybody, what about coronavirus? 3 states have called on the National Guard, everybody, to help alleviate their health systems, overwhelmed by rising COVID-19 cases. The New York National Guard has deployed 120 medics to help overtaxed long-term medical facilities, and many more are being sent to hospitals as well. Maine has made a similar decision as it reported a high number of COVID-19 hospitalizations. There is new news about how the vaccines protect us against the Omicron coronavirus variant. The Pfizer spokesperson say that protection improves with 3 vaccine doses. Can't wait to talk to Dr. Deborah Furr-Holden about that, because what do you think? Have you gotten your boosters yet? Are you planning to get a booster? Some people are saying no. Here's some interesting news. Hispanic voters are now evenly split among the parties, according to this Wall Street Journal report. The nation's large and diverse group of Hispanic voters is showing signs of dividing its support evenly between Democrats and Republicans, more so than in recent elections, according to a new Wall Street Journal poll. They say it's a troubling development for the Democratic Party, which has long counted on outsized Hispanic support. I cannot wait to talk about that. What do you think? Why do you think that is? And do you think that could happen in the African American community? Hey, Donald Trump actually got more black votes in 2020 than he got in 2016. And Americans are less wedded to the Democratic and Republican parties. They are more independent. What do you think is going to happen? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Voting rights advocates are sounding alarm bells over a spate of recent redistricting plans across the country that they say could disenfranchise voters of color and underrepresented communities. The North Carolina Supreme Court just delayed the state's primary elections, now set to take place in May of 2022, due to lawsuits over congressional and state legislative district maps. You know, Republicans have been gerrymandering. Well, Democrats and Republicans gerrymander, but Democrats have been gerrymandered out of power. Remember, in the House of Representatives, Democrats represent 4.1 million more people than they have seats for. Think about that. And the numbers are at 7 million in the 50 U.S. senators represent 7 million more people than the Republicans in the U.S. Senate. Think about that, everybody. Big oil is making big money. They surged to $174 billion in 2021 amid rising gas prices. What about free COVID tests? Do you think that we should have them like other nations? Well, the Biden administration said no. So what do you think about that? Even as 8 Pfizer and Moderna investors became $10 billion richer as the Omicron variant emerged. Yes, you heard me. 8 Pfizer and Moderna investors became $10 billion richer after the Omicron virus emerged. You can't make that up. Sadly, violence and gun violence in America, an American epidemic, that is the question. Well, at least 12 major U.S. cities have broken their annual homicide records in 2021. And there's still 3 weeks to go in the year, everybody. God bless us. And Elon Musk had something very interesting to say. He said that his Neuralink company hopes to start implanting brain chips in humans in 2022. Oh, Pastor Darius Brooks, as these billionaires continue to look up to the sky, I wish they'd look up to the heavens, if you know what I mean. How you doing?
Santita, that was good. If they look up to the heavens, they would get it.
We could all get blessed. We could all get blessed. What is the good news today?
The good news today is talking about that right there. Watch this. Santita, Matthew 24:12 says, and because, watch this, you got to check with me, and because iniquity shall abound prevalent in a large way, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure, suffer to do what's true, or though it seems it's hard to do this, I will, he that endure unto the end, the word of God says the same shall be saved. I'm watching my clock, Santita. It's 6:13 because this stuff is so juicy. I got to be careful. Santita, if I had to use a thought this morning in conglomerate of understanding everything that's happening in the world, if I had to use a thought today when running my own race, Santita, it took me years to understand this right here. Improve my credit, paying off my debt, my home comfort, definition of family, being patient while working, processing God's word for me, my marriage, my friends, my conduct, my choices, my opportunities, my responsibilities of managing well, my negligence of losing what I never should have lost for something not worth the cost. It took me years to get here, Santita. When running my own race. What is the race? A race is a usually geographically isolated population or organisms that differs from other populations or production of the same species in certain heritable traits. That's right where we are, what you and I dealing with at the radio station, my family, everybody. With God, things doesn't just go away. With God, things happen to stay. It grows or matures even the more each day when God has put something together. What does running your own race really mean? How do you discover you? How do you define you? When you study God's word, in order to find you, you must find his complete word in you, for you. How do you define this Christ in you? All this stuff that's going on, how do you make sense out of this? Watch this. Whatever you see, whatever you do, whatever you choose, always stop and ask yourself, particularly in these places, your worst place, your growth place, your creative place, your trouble place, what word of God do I know that I can use here for this with this? I got to go. God,
Excuse me.
He doesn't give you people you complete with, Santita. God gives you people. He don't give you people you compete with. God gives you people you complete with. Don't let your faith in God be ambushed or sabotaged by the world's definition of faith. When it comes to you, you have to be clear on what the Word of God is and what the Word of God is not. Each day we're to believe God's Word will take us to another amazing place that stands on foundational treasures. Keep that word in your heart. Write it down. Everything God does, they're foundational treasures. They don't go away. God's Word does not only give us the healing of the Holy Spirit, and I'm closing with this, Santita, He also gives us the fruit that comes with it. I'm going to run up out of this place. God does not only give us the Holy Spirit, He also gives us the fruits that come with it when running my own race.
Amen to that. Everybody in your life is here for a reason. There is an expression, no man is your friend, no man is your enemy. Every man is your teacher. Think about that.
And you got to know,
Thank you for
and
that.
some come into life for a reason, some
Yes.
for a season, and some for a lifetime.
That's right. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Everybody is a gift. Everybody's a gift. Everybody is a gift. You are a gift. Of course, Grace Central Church in Westchester, Illinois. What is the address?
10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. We are feeding 200 to 600 families every Tuesday from 5 to 7, and we do the seniors from 12 to noon every Wednesday.
Okay. All right. You know what, everybody, because that's important. A lot of people at this time of year, this is when you feel the challenges of not having enough food, of not having enough. I know at Rainbow Push at 930 East 50th Street, every Saturday we are giving away food baskets with groceries. Please go over there. Please go to Grace Central every Tuesday. Is it every Tuesday and Wednesday?
Every Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday from 5 till 7. Tuesday from 5 till 7. Tuesday from 5 till 7. And Wednesdays for seniors from noon till 2.
And everybody, please consider contributing to these churches and putting them under your Christmas tree. And please consider putting Rainbow Push under your Christmas tree. Helping people really does cost. But you know what? You can't afford not to help your brothers and sisters. Love you, Pastor Darius Brooks. Thank you for that good news today. We've got Dr. Deborah Fur Holden. God is restoring her health, and we're so excited about that. And Jordan, her daughter, her health is being restored. And did baby India get back home? I know you're waiting for her to come home.
She came home last night.
Oh, bless your heart. So you all are both COVID negative now.
Yeah, I took a test yesterday, and we took a antigen test, a rapid test, and it came back negative, which just means it's likely that we're no longer shedding virus. So she came back home last night. Yes.
Wonderful. So tell me about, just very quickly before we get into this, what is that process? I mean, because you have a newborn baby, you and your daughter, her mother, both tested positive for COVID, and so then you had to send her to be with trusted relatives so that you could make sure that you did not infect her. How long does it take for you to find out if it's safe to bring your babies or your children back home?
So here's the overall recommendation. And this one, it's nothing like going through something yourself to understand how things work and get the real lived experience of what it's like for people on the other end, right? Because we've seen during this pandemic, a lot of the healthcare professionals and the public health people and the doctors and whatever, everybody got a lot of recommendations. It's a whole nother ball of wax when you're living it, okay? So here's the general recommendation. You should wait 10 days from when you are a known case, or 14 days from your known exposure. So a lot of times people will get exposed and they don't know where exactly they got exposed, right? Or people will end up a case and they, it might take them, several days after the onset of symptoms to say, hey, I'm going to go get a test and just make sure this ain't COVID. So these are general guidelines, and depending on some, external factors, will definitely not have you fall short, but may have you kind of being in quarantine or being isolated from others a little bit longer than necessary. But here's the basic thinking. If you are 10 days from when you've been diagnosed, right, from when you have a positive test result, typically that'll mean you're at least about 14 days out from when you acquired the virus. Because it takes a few days for the virus to grow enough so that you have a big enough viral load that it can be detected on a COVID test, whether we're talking about a rapid test or a PCR test. And the PCR test tends to be a little bit better than the rapid test at identifying positive cases early, okay? So if you get that test, by the time you test positive, you've likely actually had the virus in you for 3, 4, 5 days. So that's why you only have to wait 10 days from the day when you're actually diagnosed, because unbeknownst to you, you actually had it in the days preceding that positive test result. If you know that you got your test result, let's say you're one of these people, honestly, like my daughter, who doesn't really leave the house too often. She's a student. They're doing remote learning. The job that she had prior to having baby India was remote. So she really didn't, she didn't really have a reason to leave the house too much. And before the, snow hit the winter streets, the Michigan streets, when she was going outside, it was mostly just for exercising to get a little sunshine. She gets groceries delivered, all of that. So she would have been somebody who could say with certainty, I know when I was exposed because nobody's really been coming in my house and I haven't really been going outside of the house. So for her, she know that she got exposed by me sometime on Sunday or Monday. And she started to show symptoms around Wednesday, which that would line up with like a Sunday exposure, right? So she can go 14 days from when she had that known exposure or 10 days from when she had the positive test result. Now, what a lot of people will do, and I don't know if you remember this, the CDC used to tell us you can't test your way out of isolation. Mm-hmm. They would say you can't test your way out. And then that recommendation, they kind of threw that one away. What a lot of people will do is they will actually just take another COVID test, because if that COVID test is negative, it means that your body has cleared the virus and you are no longer at risk for shedding virus, which is how you infect others. And so that's what we did. We took the test because it looks like, and I don't know, I would not base a scientific or professional opinion on my very limited experience. But if you look at the early data that's coming out, that came out of South Africa, they sort of put it out in the public domain, what they saw with these first, 40, 50 cases of Omicron in South Africa. It looks like this has milder symptoms. They look to be shorter lived, but it looks like this Omicron variant might spread more easily. So I thought, this is interesting, because I really did have pretty mild symptoms, relatively speaking. Even when I compare my symptoms to other breakthrough cases, so people who, like me, were vaccinated, but also contracted COVID, but had the Delta variant, my symptoms, I think, were milder than those folks, and they seemed to subside a lot quicker. So we went ahead and got a test thinking, if that's in fact how this one works, it's a little shorter lived and milder symptoms, then we might be able to get the baby back home earlier. That's another tough call. We talked to my daughter's pediatrician, and I'm just encouraging everybody. If you did not have a primary health care provider for you, your parents, your children, everybody needs a primary health care provider. You need somebody that you can call as things come up and get advice from and get recommendations from. And it needs to be somebody who's already ideally familiar with you and your health and your circumstances and all of that. So we immediately, the second I tested positive, we called the pediatrician and asked, what should we do? Do we keep her here? Because what's the likelihood, given she is the center of our universe? I mean, this kid is just, she's on Zooms with me all day. She's sitting next to me while I'm working. We do tummy time an hour every day, and grandma or mom gets down on the floor. We're laughing with her. She, practices holding herself up and holding her head up. So we're like a lot in her face and a lot, interacting with her. So we thought, what's the chances that she has managed to escape becoming infected, given how close we all are? Number one. And then number two, what's the best recourse, the best strategy moving forward? Do we get her out of the house? She showed no symptoms. So what we did is the second, literally on Monday, I felt just a teeny itch in my throat, teeny itch. I started masking up indoors. And I said, you know what? I think I'll have to stay away from the baby just because I might have a cold or something, because I did go to this wedding. So I wasn't even thinking COVID. I was thinking it could just be a cold. And so what we decided, because then on Tuesday, I said, my symptoms are worse. Jordan, you need to mask too, and we need to make sure that we protect her just in case it's a cold or COVID, right? And I'm still in my mind not thinking it's COVID. So we did implement precautions pretty early on to protect her. She showed no symptoms. So we decided that we wanted to, and then, for 2 days, in between, she had a lot of time alone, right? So she spent more time in her nursery, less time doing some of the things we normally do. Once I got diagnosed, we immediately made a plan to get her out of the house, because we thought it better for her to not have any disruptions to just the kind of life that she's used to living. She's a child that's very interactive with. She's acquiring a lot of, language, because we talk to her a lot, and we just didn't want her to have to be in isolation, which is what the recommendation is. The pediatrician recommendation was, you have to be masked up around her. A lot of the things that you all normally do, you should not do for the next 14 days. I said, 14 days? 14 days of no tummy time? 14 days of no stories? 14 days of no, hugs and hanging out? I said, no, that won't make sense to her. And so we decided to send her with a relative who could keep pace with those things, but wouldn't, potentially expose her to this virus. So she has stayed COVID negative, has shown no signs and symptoms. And once we tested negative, like I said, as soon as we tested negative, my daughter got her little self-organized and went and we got our baby back.
Bless your heart. But you know what? I'm so glad you gave us this story today, because this people are in houses. We live multi-generationally now. And so this becomes a real issue when one of your loved ones comes home and they've got it, whether you have a newborn baby, a toddler, school-age children, teenagers, or if it's just, hey, like my parents, right? They both ended up in the hospital together with COVID. So think about that, everybody. We have to figure out ways to really protect each other. And I am absolutely, when I am not eating, when I'm with my mother or father, I'm masked up. I am. Love you, Dr. Deborah Verholden. But you know what? You need to stay on, because, of course, we're about to give an update on what happened with the deliberations yesterday with the Jussie Smollett case. We're keeping our eyes open on this, because if we allow this to happen in the dark, what could happen to you? It could happen to anyone. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Dr. Deb, I couldn't even get to my questions about the boosters, but I'm so glad you told us that. Matt, can you bring this down just a bit, sweetie?
With the ComEd Energy Efficiency Program.
Okay. Dr. Deb?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, because, that's a process, and we don't know about that process. But what about people who don't have a primary care physician?
If they Miss Stanley on the line.
Oh, okay. Let's bring Miss Stanley up. Chelly?
Yes.
How are you? You
Morning,
know, I've got
Santita.
Dr. Deborah is here waiting so she can get the latest and the greatest from you, just so that you know. No
I
pressure.
need the tea. I need her to spill the tea. What happened yesterday? I can't wait.
No pressure.
Morning, Santita.
You've had her. Look, this woman helps her. She is building the School of Public Health at Michigan State's medical school, okay? She's the big cheese. And she's also she's also at Johns Hopkins. So she's the big cheese. You are keeping her from her duties because she wants to hear exactly what is going on. She said, no, I'm going to wait. Taking up a phone line from a caller. Doesn't matter. We love Dr. She's part of the family here. She's part of the furniture. So she's not taking up any call. It's her line. So it's very interesting. Because now the Hollywood Reporter, they're saying, oh my goodness, no, is it Deadline? One of the Hollywood industry Bibles. They're saying, he's looking to work once this is over. I'm like, really? That's from the Hollywood Reporter. Amid legal jeopardy, Jussie Smollett is shopping new projects. I'm like, okay. So, it's so funny. When you get taken down, these people want you to die. And I've seen it happen. Over the past few weeks, we've been living in an extraordinary time in which we have seen two of the biggest cases of the year on TV. That's why we have courtroom TV. But this case has been hidden. And what makes it even more interesting, everybody, is that we've been hearing different things about the judge. Is the judge being fair? We don't know. We do have a credible lawyer for the defense who said, this man lunged at me. And he's been hostile the whole time. Don't you want to know about that? Don't you want to know about the backgrounds of the police? And why is it that their records are not allowed into evidence in this case? Wouldn't you want to know that? Doesn't that give you context? Shouldn't you have known that Mark Furman was a racist? I think it was really, really important. Someone who really should have left the LAPD. You remember him from the O.J. Simpson case. He should have left the LAPD. He was hostile to black people. Don't you think that was relevant? So I am so glad to be talking with Shelley Sandley once again, brilliant investigative journalist who's been giving us, really a bird's eye view into what is happening down at the courthouse at 26th and California here in Chicago. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763, WCPT, because in fact, and you can text me at that number as well. We have been getting calls from you all week about, just given what you've been hearing here, it's helped to change your mind about the case. You are really clear on the degree to which the media coverage have been biased against Jussie Smollett, as they are biased against so many people. So, Shelley, talk to us. What happened? You got Dr. Deb holding on to find. She said she wants the tea. And so do I. What happened in court yesterday? The jury are in deliberations, right?
Yes, they are. They went into deliberations around, I think, 2:30, and then they ended for the day at 5:15, and they're back today at 9:15. So yeah, there was, Dan Webb started his closing argument, and he went for about 2 hours. He basically everything you've ever heard in the media, about this case is their perspective, is Dan Webb's perspective and the CPD's perspective. So he went through all that and sort of, said that this happened, and the brothers said that this, that Jussie had put them up to it and all this kind of thing. And he spent about 2 hours. And, basically his case is built on the word of the brothers, because Jussie says that he was with the brothers on the 27th, but it was because Abel was starting to train him for an upcoming music video. Dan Webb says he was with him because they were planning a hoax, a hate crime hoax, and he gave multiple reasons. Dan Webb, different theories about why Jussie would have done that, none of which made sense. But he did bring in yesterday that he thinks Jussie did it and told the brothers to buy red MAGA hats, even though, of course, none of the suspects were reported as wearing a red MAGA hat in the police reports. But he said that he did it that Jussie did that to make it look like Trump supporters and to potentially start a race war. So, that we did hear that in the media at one point, and that was the first time that it came out that I heard at trial. But that's obviously quite a inflammatory statement. And of course, that's based, according to Dan Webb, solely on what the brothers said. So then, I just wanted to mention, I was watching the room at that point, and I was in the overflow room with the media and with community members. And, he went on for 2 hours. And during that time, I counted 6 people falling asleep, including 2 journalists. One person was snoring, and one person spilled tea on themselves because they had fallen asleep and then spilled their tea. So I felt that was, kind of an interesting sign.
But you said he spoke for 2 hours. Didn't the judge limit the closing statements to 90 minutes?
I think he did initially, but when they got in there yesterday, the judge was saying each side can take as long as they want. There's no limit. So, yeah, and Jussie's been charged, with 6 crimes because they said that on 6 occasions in 4 different police interviews, he falsely reported to the police that he was the victim of an actual hate crime. And I felt chilling, because it's like, okay, every time you talk to the police, if they're going to turn it on you, then each time is a crime according to them. And, at one point, Dan Webb was, because this is what they have to do to make their case, but they were saying that Jussie's injuries were not real and were not significant, and that's because it wasn't a real hate crime and he wasn't seriously injured. And that is just the way that it was being talked about was just so, for me personally, triggering. It was just like so minimizing someone's, being attacked. But they, on the stand, Jesse was saying that before, when he was on the stand, Mr. Webb was doing the same thing and saying, you weren't even really injured. And Jesse interrupted him and he said, Mr. Webb, I have a permanent scar under one eye and I have a permanent kind of black eye on my other eye for 3 years. And he said, my injuries were absolutely real, and this affects my career going forward because, he often plays people who, you definitely need to have a very clean face and, a certain character,
He's an extremely good-looking guy. And so
right.
He does not cast for people with scars and who look like they have been having a hard time, not Jussie Smollett.
Exactly. So, that went on for, as I said, Dan Webb went on for about 2 hours. And then Nenye Uche, who is Jussie's lawyer, started. And he, honestly, just did very excellent work. He had been banned. Jussie's team was banned from talking about, by Judge Lynn, from talking about police misconduct, the officers' allegation backgrounds. They can't talk about Eddie Johnson, Kim Fox, Rahm Emanuel, the CPD leaks, or anything like that. Even police misconduct they can't talk about. So, obviously they were very limited in how they can defend Jussie in this case, but they still gave the jury plenty of evidence to cause reasonable doubts. And, Nenye started by saying that the prosecutor's case against Jussie is built like quote, built like a house of cards. And we all know what happens to a house of cards when you apply a little pressure. It crumbles. So, he was speaking about how Ola, when he was on the stand, who's the older brother, he said, "I don't recall," in response to the defense team's questioning of him. So many times that they had a hard time keeping track. One lawyer on Jussie's team counted 27 times. Another counted up to 40 times. And Abel Osendario said it 19 times. So when they were questioning them, they often would just say, I don't recall, and that was their answer to these questions of Jussie's defense team. And Nenye was also saying, Nenye used to be a prosecutor here in Cook County, and now he has his own practice as a defense attorney. But he was saying that he has never seen CPD or prosecutors trying to explain away illegal guns and drugs as they were with the brothers. Because when the police, went to the brothers' house and they had first arrested them, they went to their house and also looked through the house, and they found a huge cache of guns and high-powered rifles, and even with scopes and things like that. And they also found, it sounded like heroin and cocaine. But obviously the brothers were not charged with any of that, even though...
Stop. No, stop. You're going a little fast. They found a cache of guns and heroin and cocaine in their homes, in their possession. And they were not charged by the police? Exactly. And in fact, the police and the prosecutors were explaining it away on the stand. How?
Mendenhall, who is on Dan Webb's team, he later said, when he did the final closing argument for Webb's team, he said that the detective, quote, didn't know how long the cocaine was in the brothers' safe. And they estimated perhaps maybe it had been there 10 to 20 years. So that's how they try to explain away those things, by just making up very strange statements that maybe it was just sitting there for 20 years and that's why they shouldn't be charged for that. Very strange. And Nenye had also asked Detective Cease when he was on the stand about the fingerprint results from the brothers' guns because, Ola is not allowed to touch guns as being a former a convicted felon for aggravated battery. And he's apparently not even supposed to have guns in the home where he's living. So Nenye asked Detective Cease about, the fingerprint results, and Detective Cease said, I don't know, on the stand. And he was one of the lead detectives. The other way that the prosecutors tried to get around this Ola being in a house with high-powered weapons was they said, oh, Ola didn't actually live there, even though it was very clear that he did. His clothes were there, his license said that was his address, but they said, no, he didn't actually live there. And Mendenhall went on and on about that later, about it doesn't matter that his clothes were there. It doesn't matter that his license was there. He said he didn't live there, and obviously he's very trustworthy, and he didn't live there. So it was very strange. But, Nenye was defending Jesse in chapters. He had a chapter. This is chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And by the time he finished chapter 3, he told the jury there are already 43 doubts that have been presented, and then he said, quote, in the United States of America, one doubt equals not guilty. So he kept, talking to the jury about our rights, and that we have the right to be considered innocent until guilty, and that the jury, has the responsibility to take that very seriously and to really uphold the standard of, if you have any doubts whatsoever, that's a not guilty, because the prosecutors didn't prove their case beyond any reasonable doubt. And he was sort of charging them with protecting that right, because he mentioned, basically there was this mob mentality in our society, and there's all these things going on with the prosecution of this case, that they are kind of the protection mechanism against all of that. And he mentioned, I'm just trying to find this one part, that he mentioned that, there was a jury at one time in Boston who basically had to make a decision against, and there was a mob outside the door, this popular sentiment and a literal mob. And so this jury had to be courageous and make a decision based on the evidence rather than their fear of the mob or their, the fear of public sentiment. And so he was really just charging them with being clear about their role in protecting our constitutional rights. And he also mentioned, Jesse had anti-motives against having his face injured. He was supposed to, or he did film a history-making television episode of a Black gay marriage within, I think a week or so of this attack. So that was one motive, that he wouldn't have wanted his face bruised and battered. And then the second was that he was soon after filming a music video. So, Nenye was just pointing out, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And he said that he asked why Jesse would tell someone to shout slurs when the brothers said they wanted to avoid being caught, and when the security camera that the brothers claim was supposed to film the whole thing doesn't record audio. So it just, their whole case just didn't make much sense.
Well, my question is, I have a question for you, because this is, perhaps you can help me with this. I don't know too many people, particularly Black people, who can be within a mile of a cache of guns, and heroin and cocaine, let alone have it in their home, and they don't go to jail.
Right.
I mean, so my question is...
Yeah, I saw that. Oh, sorry.
No. Please, your point, because this is not adding up, because I want to know who these brothers are.
Right. Yeah, I saw them speaking about that this summer when they had some pre-trial hearings, and you could watch it on Zoom with the judge. And Jesse's team said to the judge, Judge, people get arrested for this in Cook County all the time for being in a home with guns, even though they're not their guns, they're not registered to them, but they're a convicted felon and there's guns in the home. They said this is common practice, that they get arrested just for that, for being in the home. And this guy actually lived in this home. And Judge Lynn said, oh, no, people don't get arrested for that. And Jesse's legal team was, I remember one of the women on the team, just the look on her face to be told that what happens routinely doesn't happen routinely, according to the judge. But to your other point, Mendenhall, who's on Webb's team, final argument was basically defending the brothers, defending their honor, as it were, that these are honorable men. These are, so he went on and on for probably 20 minutes just defending the brothers' character. And, that's basically because they are the prosecutor's star witnesses. And so they have to do everything they can to protect them, to defend them, I've never seen anything like that. They were explaining away every negative thing that the brothers did, and saying that the jury should absolutely trust these guys and their every word. So it was definitely very bizarre. But then the other witnesses that weren't their star witnesses, at least two of them, the prosecutors actively sort of tampered with. And I mentioned the other day Anthony Moore, who Nenye brought up several times yesterday, who is the security guard who saw a white masked man running from the attack, running from the scene, and he told that to the police, and he told that to the prosecutors, and he said that he felt threatened and pressured by the prosecutors to change his story and to say that the man was black instead of white. And so there was also an Uber driver who said that the brothers had a phone in the back of the car when he was driving them on a first part of the trip. And this is against the prosecutor's case, that the brothers would have been lying if they had a phone at that point. And so when this man went in to speak to the prosecutors, they told him, even though someone was clearly talking on a phone, talking to themselves for about 2 minutes before the other person got in the car, and then they were still talking on the phone and talking to the other person, the prosecutors told this witness, well, you didn't actually see the phone, did you? So you can't be sure that they were talking on the phone, can you? And they kept doing that to him when he was in the prosecutor's office. And then when he was on the stand and they tried to do it to him again on the stand, he said to them, that's what you are doing to me in your office. He said, I didn't see the phone, and I told you that I didn't see the phone, but everything that happened made me pretty sure that there was a phone at that time. And he sort of, stopped them from trying to make him doubt himself on the stand. And he pointed out that their strange questioning and trying to flip his words and put words in his mouth was what they were doing to him in their office. So, Nenye brought that up quite a bit during the closing arguments. And he also, this was another thing, he showed them a video of a car that followed the suspects pretty much after they ran by the guard. This white car showed up and started carefully following the suspects. It did a U-turn to follow them, and then it carefully followed them all the way to the taxi at the Hyatt Hotel. It parked and waited until these people got in the taxi, and then it drove by, and you can see the person in it looking at the suspects as they get into the taxi, and he's a white man. And so Nenye had asked Detective Thies, who is this person? Did you look into it? And Detective Thies said, no, I didn't look into it because they got in the taxi. And Nenye said, that's bizarre. Obviously, you would want to know, why is this car carefully following these suspects? And so he said, to the jury, who is he? Who is this man? And he pointed out that Detective Thies didn't investigate it. He continued to ask the jury questions about the man in the car. And then he concluded by saying, why am I doing Detective Thies' job for him? So he just continued to bring up all these doubts and all these things that the investigators didn't do. And he said, he told the jury, we're dealing with some very powerful elements. He talked to the jury about, the mob mentality. He talked to the jury about, our constitutional rights as citizens. And he said, quote, this is not an easy case, not because of the evidence, but because of the larger issues going on. And that, of course, includes the fact that they weren't allowed to talk about, things like CPD misconduct or anything that the state did wrong in this case, frankly, except what the prosecutors did wrong. The judge had not banned that because I don't think he knew about it. ahead of time. But, you know, he definitely spoke to the jury about that. Basically, they are, as I said before, the ones who can kind of, even though all this happened, even though the state has abused its power so much, that they still are the ones who make the final decision. And he said to them, I need constitutional warriors in that jury room. I need someone to stand up. I need you all to stand up and fight for your own rights. Because as you said, Santita, if this is allowed to happen, and these character assassinations and the public mob mentality that was stirred up and frankly incited by the media and, you know, reporting CPD statements as though everything was true, that's very dangerous for all of us.
Well, hold on, because
concluded by saying,
no, because I think, you know, we have to go back to when this happened. This is when Mary Emanuel, was being pushed out of office because of the Laquan McDonald tragedy and scandal. And the CPD was under fire because everyone was absolutely devastated by watching this boy killed on video, and to know that the mayor hid it so that he could be reelected. I mean, long story short. And so they were under fire at that time. And the fact that they went public nationally and internationally on the news, including the mayor, to go after him, I don't understand it. You know, when the charges had already been dropped.
Exactly.
I've got literally 90 seconds for you.
Yeah, I'll just say that, you know, at that point too, Trump was very involved in that because obviously he said that they said MAGA country, and so it turned into this very strange, incited cultural war. And it was all just so unfortunate because in the beginning, the right wing, I heard many on the right say, if this happened to Jesse, it would be wrong, you know. And if they were only allowed to know, if everyone was just allowed to know that it happened, we could have had a very different healing conversation in this country and talked about our values. But instead, you know, all this happened, a huge cover up and, you know, inciting the public for not our benefit, but for others' benefit. You know, others benefited from this, not the people themselves. And I just wanted to end by saying, you know, what Nunye concluded yesterday by saying was, quote, this beautiful quote, he said, "Don't let the torrent of passion make shipwreck of our constitutional freedoms." And, you know, so he was able to bring this case, even with all the limited elements that he could speak about, he was able to really put the case in context, to speak about its importance, to speak to the jury about their role, you know, in protecting our rights. And I think, you know, the Fox News person that I was sitting near was very moved by that as well, it seemed to me. And they spoke about that, you know, as well in their reporting, because it was clear, you know, that we're not just fighting for a certain side, you know, this is fighting for all of our rights, that we don't let someone be publicly denied their rights and have their rights so violated on such a public stage, because that is dangerous for all of us. And so fighting against that is fighting for everyone and fighting for no one to be treated like this and to be abused by the state in this way.
Well, Shelley Stan, you know, investigative journalist extraordinaire. I mean, really, you are what journalism really is about. And up against a headwind in a very unpopular environment, you dug down and you investigated the fact of this case. And it is because of you, in large measure, that we are getting the truth. And so as people have really just lauded this show for trying to get the truth to you, please give that to Shelley Stanley, because she is the person from whom I got the truth, a big bulk of it. And I just thank you for your courage. I thank you for continuing to fight, and I can't wait to speak with you on Monday. How about that? Hey, everybody, did you know that the 13th Amendment, which freed us from slavery, there is an exception. Do you know you can be a slave again if you go to prison? With an expanding prison industrial complex, with America being the incarceration nation, doesn't that make you suspicious? Well, members of Congress are trying to close that loophole. Should they? Back in just a minute with the Santita Jackson Show. Shelley, thank you for your work. Is Deborah, is Dr. Verholden still there?
Ramping up investigations on non-filers.
Yeah, she's still on the line.
Your tax returns for a year or more, or you owe back taxes. Now's the time to call Optima Tax Relief before the IRS finds you.
Oh, can you bring down the radio for me,
man?
man?
Most trusted.
Thank you. So did you get some tea today?
Yes, good stuff.
it's just a lot.
Good stuff. I'm looking forward to this verdict, and I really hope there's a good documentary that comes out of this. I really do hope that.
Ooh. And you know, Shelley, your work should be at the center of it. Really.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I agree that I feel that this is what journalism is supposed to be. And I hope that, it will become that again, because, what's going on in general in the media is just so unfortunate. And, it's not protecting our rights in general and not informing the public. It's usually kind of inciting the public or misinforming the public, which, I hope that we can change that trajectory because, in this case, I think also, the corporate media, like the way I think about it is like it's basically at this point a bunch of business alliances and, they have their business interests. And so is it their interest to have us united and, highly intelligent?
I have Attorney Fancher and Mr. McKee on the line and ready.
Thank you.
Very easily and very informed in order to change it. It's not really sometimes in these corporations' interest to have a society like that because it gives them less control.
It's just like it's not in their interest to educate people because educated people are hard to control, right? Because educated people think, and it's, they're hard to manage. You can't manage educated people. That's so many of our revolutions are led by the intelligentsia because you think things through, I would put Fannie Lou Hamer in that because she understood, she had a developed mind. Didn't have to be a degreed one, but it was developed. So we've got to look at this, but we need to dig down. And that's why I'm so glad that you agreed to come onto the show. We have to dig down and get the facts of this case. I want to welcome Attorney Mark Fancher. I'm so glad that you're joining us again. So glad, because of course he's the father of a Howardite. Hello. So, I mean, come on.
Good morning.
You cannot go wrong being the father of a Howardite. Okay.
Hi, y'all.
Oh,
hey,
great. We have had,
how you doing, Dwight?
We've had a brilliant, Shelley Stanley, who's been she's a brilliant investigative journalist. And some of the first clear-eyed reporting on the Jussie Smollett case, really it's the first clear-eyed reportage of that case I got from her. I didn't realize that I didn't know, it had not been reported, and it was right there in the reports, that the police officers, Mark, who investigated this case, and Dwight, more than 500 allegations of misconduct have been filed against them. More than $7 million have been paid by the city because of the crimes that they've committed against citizens. I mean, it's just amazing, and none of that could be admitted. None of that was admissible in court, Mark. None of it.
Wow.
None of it. I mean, I will send you some of her articles because they will make your eyes roll in the back of your head. These brothers who now said that Jussie paid them to beat them up, they actually refused to eat when they were arrested by the police because they were holding fast to the story that no, Jussie didn't do this, and that you're held for 48 hours before you're charged. It was in the 47th hour that they changed their stories. Then you have a cache of weapons and heroin and cocaine that were found in their home. They were not charged for anything. Does that sound odd to you, Mark?
Yes.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Do I have that right, Shelley?
Yes, definitely. And they, as I mentioned, they were explaining it away on the stand in very strange ways. At one point, one of the detectives said, well, we don't know how long the cocaine was in the safe. Maybe it was there for 10 to 20 years. And so that's apparently why they didn't do anything about it, because they made up an absurd statement and then used that to justify their lack of response. So very strange responses from, the CPD and the way they treated the brothers. And, the prosecutors were basically just praising the brothers, defending them at the end. And it was very strange because that's not the point of the case. But they spent 20 minutes of their final 30 minutes defending the brothers' honor in very strange ways. And that just showed that really these brothers are the main prosecutors,
1 minute.
their main witnesses, and their only case against Jesse it's all based on hearsay of what the brothers said was going on when they were together. So they have to protect them and defend them. And so much so that they spent 20 of the final 30 minutes doing that in front of the jury.
Unbelievable. Well, Shelley, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. Dr. Deb, you still there?
30 seconds.
Well, we're about to get a history.
Still here. I'm just listening.
Hold on. We're about to get a history lesson on slavery and the 13th Amendment. Why it's still, why really the prisoners in our system are enslaved. We're going to talk about that.
Well, Brother Dwight's here, so I would expect nothing less. I would expect nothing less.
10 seconds.
Brother Dwight McKee.
How you doing, Dr. Deb?
Stand by, everybody. We're coming up. And Shelley, you're free to stay because it's an interesting conversation.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, second hour, Thursday, December 9th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And, of course, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. You can text me at that number too. I want to know what you thought about what Shelley just told us about this case. I mean, really, Shelley Stanley, brilliant investigative journalist. What do you think about what she's been telling us about the Jussie Smollett case and what's happening in the courtroom and all of that? It's just been very interesting. We're going to talk about this 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which freed Black people from slavery. But did it enslave everybody else, including Black people? So we're going to talk about that with attorney Mark Fancher and, of course, our own Dr. D. Dwight McKee. And then at the bottom of the hour, we're going to look at mental illness and the pandemic. Mental illness as a national crisis, everybody, a public health crisis, according to our Surgeon General. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Let's get to a couple of these headlines so that we can get to the rest of the show. Chicago will have a high of 42 degrees, cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 37 degrees, partly cloudy. The Dow closed up 35 points, but they're up 25% for the year. The NASDAQ closed up 100 points, and the S&P 500 closed up 14 points yesterday. In the NBA, well, the Chicago and Minnesota teams had a tough time last night. The Jazz won over the Timberwolves. The Jazz 136, the Timberwolves 104, and the Cavaliers 115, and the Bulls 92. Better luck next time they play. In the NHL, the Wild will be playing the Sharks, and Chicago will be facing off against the Canadiens, everybody. So, what about coronavirus, everybody? 3 states have called on the National Guard to help alleviate health systems overwhelmed by rising COVID-19 cases. And the National Guard has been called out in New York. Maine made a similar decision. In New Hampshire, they've done the same. So we will be on the lookout. In the meantime, Pfizer is saying that you can get good protection against the Omicron coronavirus variant with 3 vaccine doses. And in Israel, they're trying out a 4th dose, everybody. Hispanic voters now are evenly split between the parties, according to a Wall Street Journal poll. Some people are saying that is spelling difficulties for the Democratic Party. We will see as we go forward, everybody. So let me give you a little bit of good news, everybody. I want you to save your homes. I want you to be able to buy a home. That is really the cornerstone of your wealth. It's the cornerstone of the American dream. And Team Hochberg wants to help you to do it. They want you to clean up your credit. They want to establish credit. They want to help you refinance your home. They want you to be able to build your wealth. If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance your existing home, then you need to call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. Dania, who was 25 years of age, first-time home buyer, called her mother, Shelley, because her realtor's preferred lender, they were not responding to her calls, her emails, or texts. They completely shut her out, ghosted her. Shelley recommended that her daughter stop wasting time with her realtor's preferred lender, and strongly recommended that she call the only lender that she trusted, which is David Hochberg of Team Hochberg. And he helped her only daughter secure the financing on her first home. He answered her questions, responded quickly to all of her inquiries, and helped her secure the mortgage on her first home at 25, everybody, at 25. So if you have a loved one or if you want to purchase a home, call the experts at Team Hochberg, everybody. And they have helped thousands of people get their homes. They've helped thousands of people clean up their credit, establish credit, get reasonable refinancing for their homes. It can happen, everybody, no matter what your background. Call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit 56david.com, 56david.com. That number again is 855-56-DAVID, 855-563-2843, 855-563-2843, or 56david.com. Everybody, did you know that slavery can still happen in the United States? Yeah, it can. The Congressional Democrats marked the 156th anniversary of the ratification of the 13th Amendment, which freed Black people from slavery, by calling on federal lawmakers to close the loophole that has been allowed to persist in the United States, which allows slavery to still exist. Got two brilliant people on my panel who can help to break this down. How did this happen? How did this happen, everybody? Well, Representative Nikema Williams on the House side, she's a Democrat from Georgia and a Democrat from Oregon. U.S. Senator Merkley, who ironically enough questioned Rahm Emanuel about the death of Laquan McDonald in his confirmation hearings as he is moving to become U.S. ambassador to Japan. Well, they have reintroduced the Abolition Amendment, which, as they put it, would close the slavery loophole by overriding the clause in the 13th Amendment, which facilitates slavery. Of course, we've got Dr. D. Dwight McKee, brilliant social scientist, with us today, and joining us again, it's been a minute. We've missed you. Attorney Mark Fancher from the National Conference of Black Lawyers. And we're so glad that you are with us. And we do hope that you will get his book and put it under your Christmas tree and put it on the Christmas trees of others. The Negroes of Friends Village. The Negroes of Friends Village. It is a fantastic book. And I promise you, during this Christmas season, you're going to come on and talk about it with us. What is the 13th Amendment and what is this slavery loophole, Attorney Mark Fancher?
Well, many people think that the Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves, but actually it applied only to the Confederate states. It wasn't until 1865 when the Constitution was amended with the 13th Amendment that slavery was presumably outlawed across the country. The only thing is that, as you've referenced, there is a loophole. The section that's relevant says slavery, involuntary servitude, and this is the key part, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So what that basically means is that slavery is prohibited as to everybody except for prisoners. And, that is that's what the controversy is all about.
Well, how has this loophole, is there a connection between this prison industrial complex between, is there a connection between America being the incarceration nation and this loophole that's still open?
Yeah, yes, it certainly is. And in fact, there's a really good book that I recommend, after you buy mine, called Slavery by Another Name, written by Douglas Blackman, who explains that really slavery, as we've all come to know it, on the plantation, continued well beyond 1865 and in many respects well into the 1940s. And one of the methods that was used to continue slavery in its old form was something called the Convict Lease system. And what that involved is when sheriffs in the South were approached by plantation owners who had lost their slave labor, the sheriffs would round up the prisoners who they were holding, and they would rent them out to the plantation owners to perform labor on their plantations that had formerly been performed by enslaved Africans. And because there was a profit motive involved, sheriffs would frequently go out and they would arrest every black person they could find on spurious charges like vagrancy or something else, so that they would have more people to lease out to the plantation owners. So that was the earliest exploitation of prisoners, and it enjoyed the full protection of the 13th Amendment, technically. And even into the 20th century and into the 21st century, as you've referenced, we've had any number of occasions when private corporations have used prison labor to perform tasks that are associated with production that normally they might have to pay substantially higher wages to, a worker on the outside. So there is this connection between exploitation of prisoners for purposes of performing minimally compensated or uncompensated labor, which has been with us continuously since what we presume was the abolition of slavery in 1865.
We've been talking with attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant lawyer, civil libertarian. He is from the National Conference of Black Lawyers, and I want you to get his book and put it under your Christmas tree, The Negroes of Friends Village. It is really a beautifully written book, and it's a fantastic story. What about the 13th Amendment, everybody? There is a slavery clause that really prisoners are slaves. I've kind of boiled it down, Mark, but that's really kind of what it comes down to me.
It is, and it goes so much further than just the simple idea of using people to perform labor, because from the very beginning, enslaved Africans were used in many different ways that didn't even involve their labor. If you look at Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution, it refers, and people make frequent reference to the fact that it refers to, indirectly to enslaved persons as being 3/5 of a person. Now, what that really was all about is that when the framers of the Constitution got together and they were figuring out congressional apportionment, how much representation different regions were going to have in Congress, Southern planters, white planters, part of the elite slaveholding group, started complaining immediately because they were living in an agricultural region of the country which was sparsely populated by white people. And they figured that if you were going to base apportionment on population, they're going to lose out. And so the compromise that was struck with them is that they said that, well, you don't have a lot of white people down there, but you own all of these Africans. And so for purposes of figuring out apportionment, you can count them as 3/5 of a person when we're deciding congressional representation. Now, in that case, enslaved Africans are not being used to perform labor. However, they are being exploited and used by their owners as essentially political placeholders. They're there to create a fiction. They're not going to be able to participate in the electoral process, They're not going to be able to run for office or participate in any way in politics, but they're being used, as political placeholders by this elite group. We've seen that occur in a number of different situations, even into modern times. There's a major private prison company that some years ago approached governors of the states. And the pitch that they made to the governors is, look, you've got this line item in your budget for corrections. We can take care of that for you. If you engage us, if you contract with us, we'll build your prisons, we'll maintain your prisons, we'll take care of them. The only thing that we have to have a guarantee from you about is that our prisons that we build and maintain will be minimally filled with 3/4, and don't hold me to that number, 3/4, capacity. Now, for any governor that took that deal, it meant that there was some pressure on them to, fill those prisons. And we know who they're going to fill them with. So yet again, even though there's no labor necessarily involved in that deal, they're once again using, African people as, a commodity, as somebody who's just being exploited for purposes of, private profit and private gain, and to minimize the burden on politicians. And so the Supreme Court has ruled that it's not just slave labor that's prohibited. It's the quote-unquote badges and incidents of slavery, things that look like slavery, smell like slavery, that also count. And so, we can see how it's reflected there, sometimes with very tragic consequences, as in Flint, Michigan. Everybody's heard about the Flint water crisis. That indirectly is also a consequence of this whole phenomenon, because the decision that was made to change the water source in Flint was made by an emergency manager. The emergency manager was part of a law that exists in Michigan, whereby a governor who wants to have direct control over a local government or a local school district has authority to appoint an individual who's not been elected by anybody to take over the entire government, take over the city council, to excuse the mayor basically from performing any duties. And so it was an emergency manager who made this decision, presumably for purposes of saving money, that poisoned an entire town. Yet again, black people in that city were being used as political placeholders. They, just like the 3/5 compromise, these people did not elect emergency managers. They went to the ballot box and they cast votes, and they elected people that they wanted to represent them. But that really, as a practical matter, was only a charade. It was only to make it look like there was democracy when there really wasn't.
Sure. And today we're using prisoners to help populate congressional districts in which they cannot vote. Well, some of them cannot vote. Those who are in prison might not be able to vote, but people who are in jail can still vote. Dwight McKee, I've got about 5 minutes. Why don't you respond to what you've heard?
Well, Mark covered everything pretty well, but it wasn't a loophole. It was a strategy. It was never any intention to free black people. Which is why they kept them in an enslaved condition by not giving them property or access to property or access to labor or to go to capital. The goal was to free blacks as a military strategy so that they wouldn't help the South win the war. And once that was done, it became business as usual. In many ways, it became worse than slavery. Because at least in slavery, the men were on the plantation and related to the women and related at some level to their children, or had the freedom sometimes to escape. But now you had these same men who on the plantation had mobility. Now many of them were now in chains, separated from the plantation and their home life family. And it totally decimated the family structure, the black family structure. which in some ways was still intact after slavery, or people moved to put them back intact after slavery, it decimated any access to that. And so what they've done is over the years, they've used that pretext of prison labor to re-enslave us and to, in many ways, justify their behavior, because what they've done is, what they did, as Mark said, what they did was they began to define and redefine what a crime was. And looking at a white woman cross-eyed became a crime, and walking down the street and not looking up at white people and paying proper deference at white people became a crime. And so they redefined the criminal codes so that anything they said was a crime became a crime. And so then once we became criminals, you could justify our punishment in what they did to us with no moral or no emotional attachment. So the North now don't need to have the choice between whether we're going to be abolitionists or whether we're going to be Christians or whether we're going to believe in liberty. Now their position is, well, they committed a crime, so they're really getting what they deserve, and so now we can stay out of it. And so you can see generations later, the effect has been a profound effect and a devastating effect for generations to come, and they still benefit at the margin of profit from our slave labor, which is why it's marked the same ratio of their capital to our loss still exists 150 years later. That the same ratio of us having for one dime we got, they got $1, it still exists at the same levels 150 years after emancipation.
Everybody. Senator Merkley and U.S. Representative Nikema Williams have joined together to close this loophole, but now it's going to be up to us, thank you, Dwight McKee and Attorney Mark Fancher, to change the strategy that keeps us enslaved, everybody. I want to take your calls about it, even as we bring on Dr. Max Wolf. I want to get your thoughts about that. What about this slavery clause in the 13th Amendment that was designed, at least that was written, to free us from slavery? I've got about 30 seconds, Mark Fancher. What should we be on the lookout for?
Well, I'll just sound this note of caution that I hope that there is success in eliminating this language, but we have to remember that just because laws change, it doesn't mean circumstances change. In Brown versus Board of Education, the Supreme Court said that separate but equal was unconstitutional, but it took an entire civil rights movement, which your father was so much a part of, in order to make that real. So let's change the law, but it requires all of us to be engaged in movement to make sure that it becomes a reality.
And your father as well, brilliant educators. I mean, it takes all hands on deck, all oars in the water to move this canoe, to move this ship, everybody. You can change the law, but changing the culture, changing minds, changing hearts, that work is even more difficult. So I want you to call me, 773-763-9278, 773-763, WCPT. What about the slavery loophole in the Constitution? And what about the U.S. Surgeon General? Dr. Max Wolf is going to come on, and he's going to talk to us about his warning. I mean, he's done something extraordinary. He's got a warning about the state of mental health of our youth. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Gentlemen, you all are absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Dr. Deb, you still there?
I'm still here. Like a moth to a flame.
Okay, I have Miss Wells and Dr. Wolf. I'm going to put them through.
Thank you.
Oh, that's the sound of the men working on the chain
Oh,
gang.
thank you, Sam Cooke. That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. All my people singing. Huh. Ah, love that man. That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. And I remember seeing them on the chain gang when I was in South Carolina with my grandma Helen. You'd see them on Saturdays and they'd be in the ditches working and things like that. And my father said, oh, that was just a common practice, and it was designed to humiliate these men in front of their families, particularly their children, because they would bring these men back to their neighborhoods, Mark and Frank, and Dwight. They bring them back to your neighborhood, oftentimes in front of your house, and they'd be wearing the prison stripes. That's how my father grew up. If you want to know why Jesse Jackson is running and won't stop until he gets out of here, it's because he remembers that. And you need to know about that, because be very clear. We're still here. We're still here. We're still here. And I thank you for that reminder, Mark. It's like, whoa, you guys, we're still here. We're still here. Dr. Max Wolf is with us. Now, you've got your fan club with you.
Still here.
Dr. Wolf, Dwight, you're Dr. Wolf's biggest fan. So just go on and say hello to him, as is Dr.
How you doing, Doc? How you doing, Doc?
Dr. Verhoeven. And of course, everyone, please put Attorney Mark Fancher. He is also an author, everybody, of The Negroes of Friends Village. You need to put that book under your Christmas tree. It is fascinating. It really, really is. I said, maybe you should have written Get Out. Just kidding. That's what it felt like. I'm serious. I didn't realize you were a creative. So, this is really exciting to me. It's very exciting. Very exciting. And of course, Dr. Deborah Verholzen, everybody wants to just hang out on the show. So that's fine with me. My show, my phone lines have turned into cheers. So that's fine. It's good. I love you guys. Oh my goodness. But you all can talk until we come back up. Okay. But it's a lot. Everyone. Do you think they're going to have any luck closing? Do you think they're going to be able to close that loophole? Mark?
1 minute.
Changing the Constitution is like a real heavy lift.
Yeah.
I think it's a great issue to put out there and to remind people about, but there are probably other ways to get at this that are probably more feasible, but I say more power to them.
But first of all, we need to know about it.
Yeah. I think that's the main thing, and I think
30 seconds.
Just fall back into the popular mythology about Abraham Lincoln went down there and waved his hand, and all of a sudden we's all free.
Oh, please! They killed him right after that.
That way.
they shot him dead.
Yeah.
Right after that was over. So
10 seconds.
Stand by, everybody, please.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, Thursday, December 9th, 2021. It's Thursday. It's the bottom of the hour. So, it's Dr. Max Wolf time as we bring him on to talk about, the Surgeon General who's issued this tremendous warning. It's a very stark warning about the state of the mental health of our youth. As we watch Kyle Rittenhouse, do you think that he's mentally unfit, or do you just think that he was raised wrong? What do you think? Or is it a combination of the two? What do you think? What do you think about how has being locked away for 2 years, how has it impacted our children, our babies, our kindergartners, our teenagers, our young people? What about student loan debt? and not being able to get out from under and start your life. How does that impact your mental health, everybody? Call us at 773-763-9278. I know you all are still calling about slavery and that issue, and Jussie Smollett, you're more than welcome to do that too. At 773-763-9278, as we get to Dr. Wolf, you know what, everybody? Hold on, Dr. Wolf. I know you don't eat pork chops, but I want you to know some of the best Southern cooking, some of the best cooking, tacos, anything. But we're talking about our Christmas vittles. Celebrations by Us has it all for you. Now, I can attest because you know I had some of these wonderful vittles for Thanksgiving. So Celebrations by Us, Chaparral Wells, what can we get from you and when can we get it?
Good morning, Santita, and thanks so much for allowing us on again. Yes, we are taking orders until December 17th. So you have a week to get the orders in for us. And give us a call at 708-526-4546. That's 708-526-4546. And we'll have your roast, as well as also your smothered chicken, smothered pork chop, smothered beef, as well as also your mostaccioli, mac and cheese, Cajun pasta, spaghetti, whatever it is that you need for your holiday table. And let's not forget the sweets of our peach cobbler, banana pudding, caramel cake, German chocolate cake, red velvet cake, as well as also this year our Christmas cookies. So don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. Thanks so much, Santita.
Ooh, get those vittles, everybody. Dr. Max Wolf, it's always a joy to be with you as you are getting ready for the holidays. Happy Hanukkah to you and your family. Sending you much love and many blessings. You know what? You have
we received a bunch of Chaparral's pork chops from our rabbi this year. But,
I'll let you do it. Please, Rebel. I don't know what you're going to do, but it's not going to be on my head. I can't let you do that.
Well, that was his gifting idea. We just accepted the gift.
Bless your heart. Max said that. I didn't. You know what? You're an economist. Why are you? Is there a connection between the health of our economy, the health of our society, and our mental health? I mean, why do you think the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, why did he come out and he was so serious as he talked about the critical issue, as he called it, of the mental health crisis that we are facing now?
Absolutely. Right? So I would always be skeptical of people who draw these simplistic one-to-ones between the economic health and the mental health of the country. They're clearly related, but it's very difficult and shifting ground to figure out exactly how, I think. But I mean, I think we know that part of what happened is living with the constant fear of sickness and death, watching people around you become sick or die, right? And we have a couple thousand COVID orphans who don't get much attention either. So for a lot of kids, COVID is this formative experience. I have a little one, and she's worn a mask in public her entire conscious life. Like the last 2 years, she's only 4.5. So people are dangerous. You have to stay away from them, and you have to be sort of isolated to some extent. You know, and obviously you can try to limit that, but to some extent, that's pretty tough for a lot of kids. And I think part of what was really good about Dr. Murthy's report is he sets the table correctly too, because things were pretty bad in 2019. Mm-hmm. So we can't lay all this at the feet of COVID, right? The situation was pretty dire before. But now we see like 20-25% of kids saying that they're anxious or severely depressed. We saw, 50% increase in suicide attempts by young women last year. And we have taking your own life as the second leading cause of death among people between 10 and 20. So we have an epidemic here. And I think it takes many forms, right? It takes the form of the disconnected kid who can't stare into the Zoom anymore and what became school. It takes the form of these school shootings, which have picked up again. And, I don't want to send the wrong message here, but it's not just the kids that have mental health challenges. I think that's all ages bonanza here in the States. So it's not just kids, but I think this particular report tries to shine a light on kids. And kids spending as much time as they do online, not everything that they're up to online seems to be reinforcing the best of mental health processes for them. And we're starting to see some conversations about that with Instagram and some of the Meta products, or Facebook, and some of the other sort of online experiences that kids are having. But I think it was a tough 2 years for a lot of people. And it was a tough 2 years for a lot of people that involved maybe the withdrawal of their support and coping mechanisms, which makes it much tougher. And then the last thing I'd say is we tend to have these social debates that assume that every kid has a mom and a dad at home who are employed, and that the house is some kind of oasis or lucky ducks hanging out at home, doing things online and playing with their iPads. And that describes the life reality of less than 1 in 5 American children. Mm-hmm. So this idea of what it means to be at home, which people have, is mostly rooted in fantasy and myth, and bears no resemblance to the lives of these kids. If anything, it probably makes them feel bad because what they live is so far from that ideal that they may feel it to be a defect of themselves or their community or their family.
Only 17.8% of our children are growing up in a home with both parents. When I saw that statistic a couple of days ago, it blew my mind. 17.8% of our children are growing up in homes with both parents. But to your point, Dr. Wolf, we act as if Ozzie and Harriet didn't even exist. People have problems, and you really have problems when folks don't have jobs and don't have money, and at the time when you're living under these extraordinary circumstances.
And plenty of mom and dad don't do a great job and aren't providing relationships for their kids. And plenty of people living with someone who they're not related to, or an aunt or a grandma or a single mom or a single dad, who are doing great work, right? So this is not to say that you can't have a good home without a traditional, family. Mm-hmm. But the idea of what you're defaulting into when schools and after-school programs and sports and community centers and parks and classes and friends are suddenly cut off, which is trauma enough, what you're defaulting back into can be pretty tough. And we kind of know that at least mom and dad, for a lot of people, spent 2 years going crazy, drinking themselves silly, taking a lot of drugs, and starting to believe insane fantasies about the world around them. Those people all have kids. Right? And these kids are living with that mom or dad or mom and dad or uncle or grandma or whatever it is, and all these stresses at home. And they don't get to get up and get out and get a straight meal and get another perspective on the world if that one's a little off every Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 2:45 p.m., right? And that respite can be pretty big. Right? I know that teachers try, and I teach classes, so I know I try, but staring into the Zoom monitor when half the kids turn the camera off and don't really know why, maybe some of them are catching up on Squid Games, it's not the same experience that you have when they're in class with you. And schools are, for a lot of, especially at-risk youth, school is the therapist's office, it's the food, it's the nurse, it's the friends, it's a chance to get out of the house, it's warm, it's reliable, and even though we have lots of issues in our schools, it might be safer than home for an awful lot of kids.
Why do you think that the Surgeon General decided to speak about this now? I mean, we see a lot of people going off on airplanes and in public spaces. We're seeing, as you said, a sharp uptick in school shootings. We also have 12 cities that have had record levels of shootings, of killings this year alone. And we are, still 3 weeks out from the end of the year.
Yeah, well, certainly holidays are, this was planned in advance. And the holidays, the period of time from Thanksgiving to New Year's is a peak period for psychiatric distress in the U.S. A lot of suicides, a lot of suicide attempts, a lot of hospitalizations. So even though it's really only a little bit more than a month, it's a much larger amount of the kind of severe distress than its portion of the calendar, if that makes any sense. And so this is a time to flag that. I think we've all seen a rash of incidents, and they show up in weird places as well as common places. We've seen the first in many, many years spike in serious car accidents. And the belief is, or pretty clear evidence, is that people are increasingly driving drunk, high, too fast and recklessly because they're too anxious, they're having a hard time paying attention, or they feel kind of lost and hopeless out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is not to pathologize anyone. This is just to acknowledge a problem. And my strong opinion is we haven't modernized our understanding of mental health very well. So if you broke your foot, nobody would think it was cool or stoic for you to just hobble around on a club foot for a long time. And people wouldn't whisper, and you wouldn't feel like, well, you don't want to be from the kind of family that breaks their foot. So if it's a physical problem, we'll take care of it. If it's a mental issue, which really isn't different other than our biases and sort of old-fashioned ideas, people have a tendency to not get help, to be ashamed. And so they spend a long time having the circumstances worsen, trying to hide what they think is a defect and not getting help. And so we do have that problem. And the last one is, I think we have to be honest here. Our health insurance system basically doesn't provide much mental health. Mm-hmm. And if you have a significant diagnosis, for a lot of people, you're better off quitting your job and going on the public Medicare and Medicaid because you can't get adequate care, right? Mm-hmm. So, I think we don't have enough care providers. Our medical insurance, which doesn't cover lots of people, doesn't really cover mental health very well. And, I think we end up with these social problems that we misunderstand. So if it's that much easier to get a gun and that much more socially appropriate and acceptable to get a gun than a therapist, then, it's going to be a life-threatening situation to go to the food court in your local mall in the holidays.
Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. What about this mental health crisis that we are facing? Before I go to any of the callers, some of the callers, is this a cultural crisis? Is this a chemical crisis? Biological? Is this biology? I mean, what? Or are there a lot of factors that you can plug into this mental health crisis, this matrix?
Yeah, clearly this is not going to be one thing. This is going to be complex, and it's going to have a lot of drivers. On the other hand, if we stigmatize mental health challenges and we don't have enough providers, our health insurance doesn't cover it, and a lot of people feel stigmatized or uncomfortable admitting that they would need help or seeking help, then that's going to be problematic, particularly if we're enduring a long crisis, one of many, that's really shredding people's ability to sort of soldier through it, right? Or kind of rely on the usual coping mechanisms, because the oldest, most reliable coping mechanism a lot of people reasonably and healthily have is to come together. And this particular pandemic has created issues around coming together and seeking the fellowship of like-minded folks or friends or relatives has become quite challenging.
Coming together in this time of political tension, political and cultural and social tension. How do we do that? I mean, it turns out that, we really do need each other. We really, really, really do need each other. And at a time when we need each other more than ever, remember, they had to change the language on being, they told us we needed to be socially distant. That was a mistake. We needed to be physically distant from each other. And, I wanted to know if Dr. Verholden is still there. Dr. Verholden, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
What are your reflections about this? I mean, because you say racism is a public health crisis. You're an epidemiologist. She, of course, is the Associate Dean of Public Health at the School of Medicine at Michigan State University, Dr. Wolf. And she stays on and she listens to the show because her segment is real early on in the show. What about the U.S. Surgeon General coming out and warning about the mental health of our young people? And you've got college-age children. What are you seeing? And you're a dean on one of our nation's one of the largest and most esteemed university campuses in the United States.
Well, it's really interesting because to pick up on the point that was made earlier, if you saw somebody and they had a bone sticking out of their leg, you wouldn't tell them, buck up, pray on it, you'll be all right. But it's true, right? You'd say, wow, you got a bone sticking out of your leg. You'd offer help. Put your hand on my shoulder. Let me help get you somewhere. We take you to the hospital. and there's a standard of care for how you treat a broken leg. They put the bone back in, they reset it, wrap you in a cast, give you a course of care and all that. The same thing exists for mental health, right? But the difference is culturally we have this pick yourself up by your bootstraps, get over it, get better. We sometimes will inject religion into it and tell people to pray on it. You know, sometimes you can't pray depression away, the same way you can't pray a broken leg away. But we don't treat mental health and physical health the same way. And there's just a whole lot of judgment that comes along with mental health that you don't get with physical health. Quite the contrary, people with physical ailments will oftentimes get empathy from others, and people want to help. People with mental health often will get judged, and it becomes a bias that we all carry. And so as a result, the difference is if your broken leg goes untreated, it likely won't affect me directly, personally, right? But if your mental health goes untreated, then we're all at risk because people who aren't well oftentimes don't have the same decision-making processes, cognitive processing, and all of that other stuff. But mental health is manageable and mental health is treatable, and it deserves the same attention that we give to, you know, physical health. So this issue around gun violence, if you look at what happens, and I was just reflecting today, there was a school shooting in my school when I was in high school in 1992. So gun violence in schools is not a new thing. There was an in-class shooting. I literally just pulled the article up out of the Washington Post on March 14th of 1992. And I read the article just the other day. There were 18 other guns in my county, in Prince George's County, Maryland, where I graduated high school, that same year that were seized from other high schools in Prince George's County. This was in 1992. When I was in elementary school, there was a young boy in my neighborhood, and there was a bully. And every day we got off the school bus, this bully got off the bus 2 stops early so he could beat this kid up. And a bunch of us just sat there in peril watching because you were afraid to intervene because you didn't want it to be you, and you didn't want the bully to turn his attention away from that person onto you. So what I did is I told my mom. My mom goes to the school the very next day. This had been going on for several weeks. This kid brought a gun to school. The kid brought his grandfather's gun to school, the one who was being bullied, and was going to take care of that guy when we got off the bus that day. And only because my mom intervened were there people waiting at the bus stop so that when he got off the bus and pulled that gun out, some adults were there to actually intervene. Like this notion of people not having safe places to go, feeling like there's no place for them to get help, kids who are being bullied, kids who are being abused at home, adults who have had undiagnosed and untreated mental health problems because of all the stigma and the judgment that goes along with it and how those things grow and proliferate over time. This is a public health crisis. We oftentimes treat mental health in the criminal justice system, and we've seen it. You've seen how the police has almost zero training and how to interact with somebody that has mental illness. And they often can be very cruel and very unkind to those people because they simply don't understand. So I think it was King who said how we treat the least among us is, you know, really the marker of who we are as a society.
Oh, absolutely.
We got to do much better at how we treat and interact with mental health in our society, because now I think we've all had the inescapable truth that we're paying the price for how we've done it thus far, and we're paying a big price.
Brian from Joliet, very quickly before I get closing thoughts from my panel. Brian, what's on your mind?
Hi. First of all, the gentleman did not define what solution to quote-unquote mental health would be. I would very rapidly like to recommend a song by Gil Scott-Heron from the album Pieces of a Man. The song Pieces of a Man describes what happens to a person when they lose their job, and it was a 1971 album, Gil Scott-Heron. And I also would like to say that I have a master's degree in philosophy, branch of that is psychology, 40 years of trickle-down economics, loss of jobs today. 50% approximately of the population working paycheck to paycheck with maybe $1,000 to spare. And we have to talk about the underlying concrete conditions. And I think if the gentleman would respond, I'd love to hear what he has to say. Certainly not the answer is Freudian psychologists. They are the only psychologists I would describe as evil tactics.
Well, you know, very quickly, I have a couple minutes left, Max. Dr. Wolf, your thoughts, because he brought the economy into this.
Yeah, look, I think the economy has a role to play. So my point was just that I think I'm a little bit nervous about A causes B here because I think it's very complicated, but I don't think that financial fragility causes massive stress, right? And so we know the big stressors that tend to trigger people: loss of a loved one, loss of a job, or a medical problem, which can be a non-mental health medical problem, because a medical problem in the United States is often a sentence into financial ruin. Right? So I do think that he puts up a good point there. I don't know the song to which he referred, but I'm sure it's therapeutic. Music is a good therapy. Often I think live music and coming together is a good therapy, and that would fall into the camp of things that didn't do so well, you know, for public health reasons in the last couple of years. But look, we clearly have an epidemic here. There's clearly responsibility in many ways. But I think the first thing is to sort of destigmatize it. So whatever, if inadequate help we do have on offer, people can actually go get. I think that's pretty big. And then separate apart from that, I think we have a chance to invest in the mental health of this Generation Z. And we certainly know now that we need to. And the last thing I'll say is, even more so perhaps, but just as much as every other healthcare spend, preventative medicine is king. Trying to put those pieces back together is a long, hard, expensive slog with mediocre probability of success. Trying to protect people from traumatizing each other and traumatic defense is the way to do this in the long term. And that can and should and needs to start with a generation of younger people who don't have adult coping mechanisms and have been through something pretty unusual here, and not something particularly helpful or unusual.
And stop stigmatizing people who are struggling, everybody. You know what? I got about 30 seconds for you, Attorney Mark Fancher. Your thoughts?
I just would like to say that Satan knows that if he keeps us running at rocket speed all the time, doing things, we don't have time to stay still and to remain connected to God. And we can't survive a planet that Satan makes mischief in without God's help. So we need to slow down, reconnect, and know that that's the only way that we're going to remain stable mentally, physically, or emotionally.
Amen to you. Dwight.
Well, you'd be surprised at the effect that empathy and love has on people's lives. And sometimes a simple "good morning, how you doing?" and listening to the answer is that day's solution for somebody's problems. So it really, in many levels, become a matter of us just being more sympathetic and empathetic to one another and love one another as Christ loves us.
Well, you know, I said a little amen to that. I said a little earlier, if the billionaires who want to go to space would look up to the heavens, I think we'd be in a different space, different place, really. We need to love each other. Love is not a weakening agent. It's the strongest, most powerful agent on earth. That is the commandment. It is not a recommendation, everybody. If you are religiously inclined, the commandment of God is to first love each other. But even if you do not embrace religion, if you're an atheist and agnostic, you know how good it feels to be loved. And you know how good it feels to love. You know, as the song says, put a little love in your heart and just be nice to people. Let's do that. And let's have some empathy. And if you see someone's emotional, social, or spiritual femur hanging out of their arm or their leg, help them to reset it. Help them. Help them. That's really what we're down here on earth to do. Let's help each other. Let's love each other. I love you, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. You all are the best. Dr. Wolf, thank you so much for that today. I think we really needed that.
I'm sure it was helpful. I don't know the song. Do you guys know the song that the caller was referring to?
I do not. Does anyone know that one?
It's Pieces of a Man by Gil Scott Heron. You can probably listen to it on YouTube. But, it's about a man who lost his job, and he's just sitting, forlorn and, broken. And it's a very nice song, very pleasant.
Well,
not pleasant, but musically.
I think we got it. But but that was Gil Scott Heron now, wasn't it? He was so profound. And, sadly in this environment, he would not be able to get a record deal. Not a record deal, it's an awful thing. These people who give us these gifts, because that's really the role of an artist in a society. They're supposed to help us to see our possibilities and our fragilities and help us to heal and make us strong. And so I urge everyone to just reach into the crates and get some Gil Scott Heron today. The revolution will not be televised. There's so much that he said to us before he got out of here. So much that he said.
Santita, can I just say
another point, though, that people
I think is really important?
Oh, of course. Dr. Wolf, and then you, Dr. Verholden. Dr. Wolf?
Yeah. I think one of the things is that to have a crisis this deep, this long, and to kind of be told to go at it alone, even though there's some sound public health advice there, I didn't want people to ignore it. But I think people have a sense that it's not going to get better and that they're on their own. And I think that is profoundly debilitating and triggering to a lot of people. And I think that's maybe more a messaging thing. And obviously, I don't think you should recklessly congregate in large unprotected groups or anything like that. But it's hard to take away people's coping mechanism and then ask them to go through 2 years of fear and stuff. And I think the last piece is just that we just compulsively pretend that COVID's over or it's not that bad. And 50 million Americans have gotten sick and 800,000 Americans have died. So I think refusing to acknowledge that it's not over and how bad it is has really led us in the wrong direction here.
Dr. Verholden?
Yeah, this notion of mental health is really funny because I looked up the stat and it says about 54% of Americans say that they know how to perform CPR. And about 1 in 6, when you actually test people, will actually demonstrate the real skills of CPR as recommended, like that, right? So somewhere between 18 and 50% of Americans know how to administer CPR. The likelihood of you being out in the world, encountering somebody having a cardiac event, and you being able to administer some kind of life-saving CPR for them is very, very small.
Yeah.
Right? It's very, very small. But we got so many people who are trained in CPR, who say they know how to do it, who are ready and willing. But the likelihood of you encountering somebody out in the world needing CPR is so tiny. The likelihood of you encountering somebody who needs mental health first aid is about 1 in 10. If you are just in the market and there's 100 people in that market, about 10 of them have some unmet mental health need happening at that moment. Yet we have no training in how to identify it and no skills or real resources and how to be supportive for people. Less than 1 in 1,000 people are actually trained in mental health first aid, how to identify and then intervene. But it's just such a mismatch. It's just we value different things. So I'm always thinking from the policy perspective, and I'm always thinking, how do we get these things baked in? It might be too late for some of the older folks, but this is the kind of stuff we can start to integrate into the standard educational setting. It should be a part of the standard school curriculum for kids. Instead of us teaching them all CPR, we should be teaching kids mental health first aid and teaching them how to identify and what to do when they encounter other youth who are struggling. That should be a part of what we do in workplaces. We do a lot of training around relationships and sexual violence and Title IX and all these other things, but we do very little in these formal settings to show people how to identify if you're encountering somebody who might be dealing with mental health challenges, even though those mental health challenges are a lot more prevalent than most of the physical health challenges that people face. So,
no, you're right.
that's
Like
just something that just crossed
de-escalation.
my mind.
No. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, how to talk to people, and really, first thing you got to do, Dr. Deb, is care about people. Hello?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's a real problem for us. Sympathy. Empathy? Please. We don't do that well. we just don't. and we're paying for it.
Yeah.
I just, because I'm wondering, like with Ethan Crumbly, I'm like, what were you all thinking letting this boy come back into school? And clearly, before he started looking for ammunition on his phone, you knew he had a problem. But we just go past people's struggles. We do it every day. We just go right past.
Collective risk too. I think we bump into some weird issues where people are like, well, it's their kid, it's up to them. But if your kid has very, very aggressive outward mental health issues that he's displaying or she's displaying, and you're not engaging it, well, I mean, A, the mystery of where Junior got it is probably solved, and B, the chance that you're going to rise to the occasion of solving the problem is small enough, right, that you might begin to sort of ask yourself, hey, can we find a better solution here than just waiting for you to do this correctly? Right? Because that story of that young fellow there it's pretty clear that the family wasn't up to it, right? Whatever exactly that might mean, the family wasn't up to it, right?
Yeah.
And in a way, they weren't going to be solving that problem. Right now. Who knows if you could or I could? I'm not trying to judge someone else, but they definitely weren't gonna. And so,
well, I'm not trying to condemn anyone, but we do make judgments, right? And we should. But condemning people, putting folks on the rack, I'm not with that. I'm not trying to do that. And I'm not trying to throw people away. And what we're really trying to do is figure out how we can save people. Dwight, you still there? Okay, he might be gone. But I want to thank you for that because I think this is a conversation that has really helped people to think today, really. And more than that, I hope it's helped you to feel. And we do, Dr. Deb, this needs to be part of policy. You are absolutely right. And we need to, I think that, we used to be graded on behavior when I was in grammar school anyway.
Yep. Behavior and work habits. It was behavior and work habits. How well you acted and how well you interacted with others.
Yeah.
It used to be grades. I remember those grades.
And it's like we don't even do that anymore. So, and when you're Zooming the kids, that's lost, right?
Yep.
You're right. I mean, see, these things are being lost, and that's and it's hurting us. It's hurting us. Dr. Wolf, what's your final word for us today? Because that was a very interesting topic that you pulled.
Yeah, look, I think this topic needs to stay front and center. And I think part of the way you set up a situation where people can heal is you destigmatize the request. You make it a little bit more heroic. And I also think we stop talking about things as these individual decisions that are mostly driven by mental health issues. So I think people have this idea of the lone wolf going out there to avenge social wrongs. When you're in a mall shooting strangers, you're having a catastrophic psychotic episode. That's what you're doing, right? You may choose the tool or the target approved by your society at your moment and your particular view of things, right? But you're a person publicly displaying with murderous force a severe untreated mental illness. And I think we have a lot of social things that go on that we debate that we don't say are mental illness because we don't think anything is mental illness or we won't talk about it, right? And so I think some of the gun violence stuff is a mental illness. I think if you're driving your kids around 12 beers into the morning and trying to beat the yellow lights, it's possible that you also have some demons to struggle with, right? And I don't think that means you're a bad person or incorrigible or unhelpable or anything like that. But I don't know how much, highway safety is going to do for you.
Dr. Deb, with people going off on every other airplane that's in the sky and going nuts, and with people acting out publicly more and more, with murder rates on the rise, do you think that how can we put this in the middle of our public health conversation? Dr. Deb, you still there? She might have had to go on. You know what, Dr. Wolf, I think that we have to figure out a way to put this in the middle of our public health conversation. It needs to be part of our policy conversation, because we're seeing the effects of this every day. You just said it. I mean, every single day. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing it. We're feeling it. I mean, I've had to get on planes, and every time I get on a plane now, Dr. Wolf, Max, I say, I hope somebody does not go crazy on this plane. And I get me a window seat, pull down, I keep my masks up, something over my head, and take a nap. Because I would rather miss this if someone is going to act a fool on this plane.
Either, right? I think restaurants, department stores, right? Any sort of public gathering space, right? And we know that the sort of substance abuse issues have ballooned as well, right? And a fair amount of our drinking and drugging is self-medicating against various afflictions, some of which have a mental health core or a mental health component, right?
Absolutely. 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 I mean, it is, and people do self-medicate with drugs and with alcohol, with undiagnosed, or maybe they can't afford their meds, or maybe the meds don't make them feel good when they're schizophrenic, when they have bipolar disorder, all kinds of things, when they are depressed. A lot of people are just walking around here depressed. And so, I mean, there's a lot that we're doing, but I tell you a lot of what we're not doing is treating it. And, I think at the center of that conversation, Dr. Wolf, has to be loving people and having compassion for people and exhibiting compassion toward people, exhibiting empathy, feeling empathy, feeling. And so I'm hoping that, and we will continue to have more conversations like this, because I think that we shouldn't be ashamed of being depressed. You shouldn't be ashamed of being bipolar, of being schizophrenic, or some combination. You shouldn't be ashamed. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. You should get help.
You should get a diagnosis too.
Yes.
A lot of people just feel like something's wrong, and then they throw labels and stuff. And diagnosing these things is difficult and not something left to amateurs or reference material from, a popular magazine. Right? It's probably not a.
You're absolutely right. This is something you really.
I realize it wouldn't be a magazine. I'm dating myself since no one reads anymore. But whatever the modern equivalent is.
You're right, though. But you're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You're right. This is what we need to do, though. This is what we need to do. So it's just.
We've started to get a piece of it. I think our sort of celebrity-obsessed culture might be helped by the fact that there's a lot of celebrities who begin to come out and actually do a public service by talking about their challenges. And I think the funny thing is a lot of people have learned to get over those and not see the person different, or not be less interested in buying the movie ticket or whatever it is that folks are worried about. They're streaming their newest project. So I think we sort of figured out that there's an issue. And certainly, although it's very rarely acknowledged, our political leadership displays some signs that, there's mental health struggles going on there too.
I knew you were going to get that one in, but it's still true.
Well, I didn't,
No, you're right.
Name and shame in this area, but yeah.
Well, no. I mean, let me tell you, I heard that when my brother was beginning to leave Congress, when he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and someone said to us privately, hey, a lot of people up here are on a lot of meds. I said, well, that I can believe, that I can see. That having been said, and several people came to me at that time, and they said, I'm bipolar. And one man who's a very, very prominent businessman said to me, and he came to me in tears. We were at a luncheon in the midst of all of that. And he said, I've wanted to talk to you. I've wanted to talk to Santita. I felt that you would understand. He said, but I'm bipolar and I take medicine every day. And he said, so when I see these people coming after your brother, and he burst into tears. He said, it breaks my heart because I know what I go through every day. He said, some days I am struggling. I'm just struggling. I'm struggling not just to get out. He said sometimes to get out of bed, just to get from moment to moment. And, and you can't, the thing is, these illnesses are treatable, and where they're not, we need to put more money and research into them. Really. You just do.
The people are all treatable, even if the illnesses aren't, right?
That's right.
I think the other thing is there tends to be this notion that you're dangerous or unstable or violent, and that's simply a sort of an old delusion. In the vast preponderance of cases, people who have a mental illness, even a substantial diagnosis, are not more likely to be dangerous or violent than anybody who doesn't.
Absolutely.
Right? So partly, I think the stigma comes from that, and a lot of stuff isn't genetic. Some is, but a lot of stuff isn't genetic, and I think the modern research suggests it's all kind of proclivities that slumber somewhere in most of us or many of us, and then whether life traumas and other events kind of trigger you. And the sort of more aggressive displays of mental health, all that people see, mental health crisis is usually people. I mean, not that this probably isn't obvious, but those are almost always people who are not getting treatment. So, I mean, I would see those episodes as an advertisement for the power and value of treatment, not a condemnation of people who need the treatment, but the tale of what happens if you don't get that treatment. Because, by the way, this is true of most substantial ailments. If you look at someone walking around who has leukemia is not getting treatment, that's not beautiful either.
You're right. You're right. So, hey, everybody, let's think about this, because a lot of us are struggling. And,
nobody's a lot saner than they were in February 2020.
No.
I'll tell you that. Nobody's like, well, back then, or COVID, I was really, struggling. Now, oh yeah, rocking it. Right? I don't think anyone's mental health has substantially been improved by the last 2 years.
Oh, no, it's tough.
And I think that's the story of all of us, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and just think about the isolation. Even if you've been isolated with a spouse or a partner, you found out how strong or how fragile. Well, all of our relationships are fragile, but you find out how strong, or just for want of another term, how weak our relationships are with ourselves, with each other. All of these things we found out, and now we're still trying to figure it out. So we need to get some help. And that's where you can't call the social sciences and psychology and psychiatry the soft scientists, the soft sciences or the soft professions, because we have some real material issues. And these people who are trained in those fields can help us. Your minister can help you. Your counselors can help you. You need that. And money needs to be put into that. That is where, our treasure should be there too. Thank you so much for bringing this to us, Dr. Wolf. I mean, really, thank you. Thank you for this.
I mean, I think thanks and recognition to the people who work in this business and to the Surgeon General for flagging it,
Oh, yeah.
They did the real work, but
I'm glad, but I like him. I like him a lot. And I think that he's just very, very sensitive. Very sensitive.
Yeah, an impressive fellow. And it's a tough topic, especially for the holidays. The last thing is, there may be people out there who are listening and certainly don't want to be saying or doing anything out of ignorance or any other that makes their life more difficult. But the holidays are a time where a lot of people need some help. And I think if you're out there and you're one of them, just know that there's a long history of the most successful, interesting people needing some help in this area and getting it and being happy for it or suffering without it longer than they need to. So if you're out there and you're suffering because you feel uncomfortable or embarrassed or stigmatized, for whatever it's worth, the chances of success and improvement with lots of basic treatments and responses are really high.
Absolutely.
And the chances of success with no treatment and no acknowledgement of an underlying risk are very low.
What else can you say behind that? It's true. It's true. Please take care of yourselves, everybody. Max, you take care of yourself.
I will work on it. Thanks, and thanks to all out there. And if you're struggling, hopefully this conversation was helpful, or at least in no way harmful.
No, I think it was helpful. I think when you talk about it, that D. Ray girl, thank you, girl. I think that when you talk about it, you take it, when you acknowledge it, and when you give it respect and you put it in a loving, exalted, respected space, it changes things, Max. You know, people want to be acknowledged, and people want to be, they want to be affirmed, and they want to be treated with respect. It's so simple. It's so simple. That's why I try to give
People want to be seen too, right?
Yes.
And if part of who you are, what you are, is that you have a particular challenge that you're fighting with every day, you should be acknowledged for the success and the effort, and you should be seen for all of you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And people need to be seen. They need to be heard. They need to be felt. We need to do that. Think about that, everybody. You know I love you, Max.
Basic human needs, like subscribing to the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube.
We're going to do that, and we're going to build this thing,
Shelter,
too.
YouTube subscription.
Well, I've got some ideas for 2022, and we're working on it. So, working on growing so that we have it. God bless you. And Matt, I want to thank you for a great show today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You grow from week to week, and you go from strength to strength. I'm so proud of you. And I thank you for all the work that you do.
Thanks, all.
Thank you. Blessings to you, Max. Blessings to you, D. Ray, and L. Stanley Davis, and Dave Dowling, and Andre, and all the people who were with us early. Paula, and let me see, Linda, and Joyce. That's right, Joyce. And Dave, and Linear Bob. Oh, I'm sending all of you so much love. Thank you so much for being with us today. Michael Ann. You're right. The most powerful force in the universe. It is love. It really is. John Cunningham, everybody, sending you much love today. Have a great, great, great day. I'll see you bright and early in the morning on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless.